All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I see that attendees are coming into the Zoom room right now. So thank you very much for joining us for our monthly virtual meeting. I'm Jeff Becker, your CAS chair, and I'm with the Office of the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. And again, welcome. Before we jump into the agenda, I just wanted to comment briefly about the fall conference. We really had a great conference, an in-person conference down in Newport Beach. Great keynote presenters on the first day. Our economist is always interesting and entertaining, and Assemblymember O'Donnell was very engaged with us and sharing where he's at with his bond bill and the goal of getting that on the ballot. And then we wrapped up with a great conversation with CSFRI and the first project and what they're finding with the summary of research out there. And of course, thanks to all of our folks that led our breakout sessions. You know, CAS really is a membership-based organization. I say that a lot, and it's because the members are where our knowledge base is and did a fantastic job at the fall conference. And of course, our state agencies and legislative advocates on day two were always on point. So I hope if you were able to attend that, you enjoyed the fall conference very much, just like I did. If you are a first-time attendee, we're very glad to have you with us this morning, and feel free to take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat box there. And as you do that, make sure that you are messaging all attendees so that everyone can see that you joined us this morning, and we'll welcome you here with us. And just as a reminder about the chat box, please refrain from any marketing in there, as it's for our members to communicate on the issues that we're talking about today. So next slide, please. All right, if you haven't heard, we've been saying this for a few months now, we do have a new member portal, and we urge you to create your profile in there. You can go in there and access events and handouts. You can manage your CAS membership. You can connect with other members. So it really is a great tool that we're kicking off here and trying to get some momentum behind. So if you do have a few moments, again, go ahead and log into that and set up your profile there. If you do need any assistance doing that, you can email Aileen at the CAS office, and you see her email address down at the bottom of the slide there. All right, next slide. Hey, we've got, oops, looks like we went 2 slides forward. Oh, we went many slides forward. Back up 1 there. Oh, did we move I think, Alan, we moved your annual conference slide to the back end. So we'll come back to you with that slide and let you give us an update on the fall conference, or the annual conference, excuse me.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we moved that towards the end, Jeff, sorry.
All right, yeah, I think I had an old version here. All right, well, let's take us then to the state architect division of the state architect slide. If Kurt has joined us, we'll turn it over to him. I don't see Kurt with us, so take us 1 more slide to OPSC, please. And we'll start with our friend Michael Watanabe from OPSC to give us an update on the happenings over there. So Michael, why don't you come on up here with me? Good morning, good to see you.
Thanks for having us. Short updates today. So we have our state allocation board meeting today at 1 p.m. Expected to be a short meeting. We don't have a lot going on this month. A few things from the EO statement to highlight, though. We did complete our 3 stakeholder meetings for the full day kindergarten program on October 12th. The current plan is to take regulations to the December 7th board meeting. If you do have feedback, you're still welcome to provide it, though, as we're finalizing that item for the board meeting. Next up for stakeholder meetings is the facility inspection tool. So with the part of the budget, OPSC was charged with updating the facility inspection tool and taking into consideration a few publications as well that are used in the school district world for cleaning standards. So we have a plan for the first meeting on November 30th. That'll be via Zoom. There'll be an evite coming out, or an email blast coming out once that's finalized with the Zoom links. That'll be 4 to 6 p.m. Part of the intention of the later meeting is to allow custodial maintenance staff, those interested parties that might be using the facility inspection tool, to also be able to participate outside of school hours. So again, that's November 30th from 4 to 6 p.m. And through our normal process, we'll publish an item beforehand, a week beforehand also, with an agenda. This month for the October board, we are giving out $754.9 million for 248 projects for priority funding out of the fall bond sale. The Form 5005 fund release authorizations are due January 25th to our office. Those can be submitted on OPSC online. We had a few questions from school districts too recently. The ability to create a 5005 in OPS line does not happen until after we mark it SAB approved. So our accounting team actually has to go in after the board and post those transactions. So it may take a day or two. If it's not urgent and you want to wait a day or two to submit it, we'll process it in the same timeline. It would just take a couple of days before that link shows up. So if you don't see it, that's why, but certainly contact our PMs. And again, as always, we'll take the form via email as well. And then last up, our virtual training series. We did one on the grant agreements yesterday. Now that those can be completed in OPS online completely digitally, we don't have to do the mailing of the Word docs back and forth to school districts for them to wet signature, sign, mailing us back 2 copies, and then us signing and sending them back to you. So we limit a lot of paperwork back and forth through that process. So we did a full training on that. It is already up on our YouTube site as well under the virtual training playlist, so you can watch that. Relatively quick process from a school district standpoint. Once the grant agreement's ready in OPSA online, our staff will email you a link to the grant agreement. You'll log on, you can read it online, and you just check a few boxes after filling in your name and hit submit, and I'll electronically sign it for you. We'll get a notification on our end. Lisa and Barbara will sign it, and then it'll show up as SAB approved in your OPS Online profile for the project, and then that'll live there forever to download whenever you need to access it. So that's great too. And then our last virtual training series for the year will come up on Tuesday, November 2nd from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And again, that's on OPS Online and how to submit substantial progress checklists and your expense reports. And that'll also include how to upload the detailed listing of project expenditures as well too. So that's again, Tuesday, November 2nd. There is an Eventbrite out for that one, and we did an email blast. The link is also available on our website. For the rest of the meeting, it's a relatively light agenda. Consent was a little light as a result of the board's policy item to allow school districts to use 2019-2020 enrollment. We are processing a lot of updates for projects that wanted to take advantage of that, so they didn't happen as fast as we like for October boards, so we're targeting December for those. In the action item section of the agenda, we have a regulatory amendments in there for the SFP. It's a quick, easy one. AB 130, the budget trailer bill language, amended Education Code 17076.10. And what it basically did is allow school districts that need to make an extended repayment period. It was previously 5 years, it allows up to 20 years now. So the reg amendments for this month are just conforming to that statute change. So that's a short item. We expect that one to go quickly as well. And I just want to call to your attention something we don't normally do, but in a 90-day calendar in the back of the book in the information section, you'll see some items tentatively scheduled for January. So we do plan to give out the $250 million for priority funding for all the people that participate beginning November, I believe it's 7th, for the upcoming round. Those at the top of the list will start getting cash right away at the January board with that general fund money. We do plan to take the annual adjustment to the school facility program grants and the biannual index on assessments for development. So we'll take those 2 items as well. And then a new one we added on to there. We tentatively have planned the board item to talk about another filing round for the charter school facilities program. Over the last couple of months, we've had a couple of huge projects rescind. So we actually have about $100 million available across all propositions for the charter school facility program. So we'll talk about opening up another filing round for that program as well. And with that, just a reminder, December board is the 7th Tuesday, not December 8th. And we'll send out our normal email blast for that as well. All right. That's all I have for you guys this month.
Michael, what was the November, December SAB meeting date again?
It'll be December 7th. And I believe it's scheduled for 2 p.m. at the moment.
December 7th. Thank you. And hey, I just want to offer some thanks to you. One for your cooperation as we collaborated on the TK regulations. That we think we've got that program in a better place, as well as I personally enjoyed the virtual training series. I have some new staff members in my office, and even going back onto your YouTube channel, and pulling those down and using them to get my staff up to speed has really been a good thing to have. So thank you for doing that.
Great. Yeah, if anybody has extra topics they'd like us to cover in the future, a lot of those were high level. If you want to go farther in the weeds, we're welcome to do that. And we said on an email blast too, we're willing to do one-on-one with school districts. If you need help using OPSC online, new systems are always challenging for people that, we've been using paper forms for 20 years now for SFP. So switching is a mentality change for everybody. So we are willing to sit with you. We're willing to screen share, watch you key in an application, help you navigate through it, get logged on, your passwords, resets. All of our project managers, our auditors have used the program. So anyone that you reach out to OPSC should be able to help you. So yeah, we're encouraging that, speed up the process for everybody, hopefully.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us, Michael. And I'm looking in the chat to see if anybody had any questions for OPSC. And I'm not seeing any in there. So again, thanks for joining us today, and wish you a great rest of your week and weekend.
We'll see you at the meeting.
All right. And we are still trying to get our DSA representative on with us. So why don't we keep moving down? We'll go up next to our legislative update. And we've got both or all of our legislative team, Rebecca, Nancy, Charis Espinoza, and Ian Padilla. And Rebecca Curley is going to kick us off this morning. Hi, Rebecca.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. Okay, so we're going to give a quick update. You might notice I have a little cold. It was not from the Cash Fall Conference. Don't worry. It came home from daycare. But wanted to just make a couple of comments about Cash's letter that we sent into the state auditor. As you all know, the state auditor is reviewing the school facility program, and specifically the modernization component of the school facility program. This was at the request of Senator Hertzberg, who was very involved in the crafting of SB 50 and some of our original bond bills. But the concern is that if we have a system that is providing state funding for facilities based on a locally funded system that is related to property values, that there may be inequities in how those state dollars are being distributed. So the state auditor is looking at that. Jeff talked a little bit about this at the fall conference, if you were there, but Cash did submit a letter to the auditor to provide some resources and some background with some of the comments that we've made over the years about ways just to streamline and improve the school facility program. So not a lot of new ideas, some things about making the program operate even better, more efficiently than it already does, things that can be done without statutory changes fairly simply. And then also some comments about ways that we can address the sufficiency of the grant for all schools. So really the idea that the state grant should align with our current costs of construction. We all know that the more that schools do in order to address things, very important policy things like sustainability, resiliency, safety, that these all come at increased costs, and that it would benefit in particular are districts that lack local facilities dollars if the state grant did cover all of the expenses that are associated with constructing facilities. And then in addition, there are some comments in our letter about how we can really get at some of those challenges for our financial hardship districts and our small districts. So just making the program operate even better for them. Nancy's going to talk a little bit about the 2022 bond efforts, but these conversations about the state auditor, the work that she's doing, will connect to the dialogue that will be happening in the legislature about what that bond looks like. So Nancy will add in a few minutes. Want to shift gears a little bit, talk about transitional kindergarten very briefly, and then I have one bill that I want to update you on. So we spent a lot of time at the Cash Fall Conference focused on transitional kindergarten. Jeff is absolutely correct that the work that was done with OPSC to help update those regulations to provide the $490 million in the AB 130 program, that process was very smooth. We really appreciate that stakeholder process and taking our feedback into account. There were a number of items that were updated in that process in those regulations, such as how do you provide the enrollment justification for those TK projects? Is it current students that are being housed by the state program? Is it future students? We did ultimately land on future students, which I think was the intent of the legislation. So that was really helpful. And then the idea that you can pool your eligibility in this program across different sites so that you can do an early childhood education center, which will be very helpful to folks as they're looking to meet those local TK needs. One really important thing here is that CASH does believe that every child in the state of California should have access to a Title V compliant transitional kindergarten facility. So that will be the backbone of our advocacy moving forward, of really making the case to the state that we need additional resources in order to ensure that there is that equitable access to Title V compliant facilities across the state. We do know that there are not a lot of extra Title V compliant kindergarten classrooms just lying around in your classroom inventory, empty, waiting to be used. And so that's going to be a big issue for the state to look at and for CASH advocates to work on over the short term and the long term as you implement your TK programs. So just shifting to one bill, AB 599 Jones Sawyer. I know Ian has talked about this. I've talked about it. We did want to let folks know that it was signed by the governor. This bill has to do with your Williams inspections. I represent county offices in the County School Facilities Consortium. So those are the folks that are conducting your Williams inspections. So this is a really important bill for CSFC, but also for the rest of our members in CASH. We've been using a very old list based on deciles 1 through 3 schools. We don't have those anymore under LCFF. And so there was a need to update the metric in the law to determine the list of schools that will receive those Williams inspections. So there's a question of, okay, well, what list are we using for this current year, 21-22? You're using the old deciles 1 through 3 list one more time. This year in 21-22, the SPI will create a new list of schools, and that list will be used for starting in 22-23, and then there are requirements in the law for the SPI to update that list pretty routinely. The new list is going to be based on a couple of factors that are federal factors. So schools that have been identified for targeted intervention and support, your CSI and your ATSI schools, as well as schools where 15% or more of teachers do not hold a clear teaching credential. So those two metrics will be used to identify the list. The new list is just about the same number of schools as the old list. We anticipate, based on some of those numbers from the feds, actually probably just a few fewer schools that will be inspected. Last thing on Williams inspections is under our COVID flexibility that had been granted. There was some Williams flexibility, waiving the annual inspection requirement for schools that were not in session in person during the pandemic. That flexibility has expired now. So for 21-22, you're back to doing your in-person inspections. The one caveat is that the Education Trailer Bill AB 130 also did provide one piece of guidance, which says that unannounced visits, which are typically 25% of your visits, should only be undertaken at the discretion of the county superintendent in consultation with local public health officials and in compliance with local and state public health guidelines. So those are the changes to Williams. The governor did sign that bill, both of those. And so we've got those changes moving forward. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ian, who's going to talk a little bit more about 599 and then some of the cash maintenance activities.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good afternoon, everybody, almost. So I also wanted to thank everybody who came to the Cash Fall Conference. It was good to see everybody. In particular, of course, I thought it was really good that M&O issues were woven all the way through the conference. So that I thought that was very positive, including a very nice presentation during the CASH pre-conference. So all good stuff. One of the messages that when I did some presenting there on these M&O issues is what I'm kind of tongue-in-cheek calling Williams 2. a lot of the fundamental aspects of Williams, there's some activity about them. Rebecca just did a nice job of talking about AB 599. That's one of them. And you heard from the Office of Public School Construction about their effort that we've talked about for them to update the facility inspection tool. And so, of course, we highly encourage folks to participate on November 30th. As soon as that information is out, we'll get that to certainly M&O folks and cash folks. Joe Dixon and I and others are also putting together a small group so we can have some more focused input during this process, both before the 30th as well as all the way through. Remember, it's going to take about a year or a little less than a year. The date is, I believe, July 1st for implementation next year, 2022. So still moving on that. Again, Rebecca talked about the county office inspections. We're looking at that from a school maintenance perspective, of course, and also interested in that. I thought Rebecca did, as usual, a great job of kind of summarizing the highlights of the bill. It's being updated and has federal indicators. Long story short, it's about the same universe of folks, and we'll continue to work with CDE on that. And of course, right, you have Williams, you have the inspections, you have the fit document itself, and of course, but then there's the repair standard. And so there's been, of course, a lot of thinking about that. The facility condition, there's requirements in the federal programs, more thinking about the good repair standard and inventories. So all of those I kind of put under the Williams because it's all being talked about, I think, for some pretty intuitive reasons. Also, Cash Maintenance Network, in terms of advocacy, in the budget process, during the bond bill discussions, other significant policy nexus points, we're trying to make sure that restoration of the deferred maintenance program and ways that we can get capital renewal projects funded, how that can be in these larger funding conversations. And so that's part of our fall as well as spring and next year advocacy focus. Also, in kind of rounding out for the maintenance network, also doing as we do in the fall, we're doing our workshop, which is a web shop this year. We finally have a date. So it is December 18th. We're sneaking it in before next year. Should be a good one. More information, particulars, agenda, speakers on that. So listen for that. Also, I'm going to be speaking at the Green Schools Conference coming up here actually in a few hours. It's being recorded, and kind of my theme is to remind some of the folks in that community how important school facilities, high performance maintenance practices are to green schools, sustainable schools, things like that. Sometimes that gets a little forgotten, but the Green Schools Conference, of course, is a good place to have a conversation about that. So looking forward to that. Finally, I'm just going to do a quick Californians for School Facilities update. Dave Walrath is not able to make it today, but it's pretty quick. We're obviously waiting for the details on the discussions over the infrastructure bill, the reconciliation bill, not the greatest word, but a very important bill. And Joe Dixon and John Dominguez, on behalf of CSF, are over there right now doing both in-person and virtual meetings, supporting our priorities, school facilities, maintenance, all the things that we've talked about all year. So with that, thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Nancy. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you, team. I am going to give you a quick update on, I don't see my image here. I hope you guys can see me. Can someone give me a nod that you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Nancy.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. So first off, I wanted to give you a quick update. Actually, for those of you who were not able to attend the fantastic Cash Fall Conference, first I'm going to pass along the update that Assembly Member Mr. O'Donnell passed along on AB 75, and he did a nice compare and contrast between his bill and SB 22 by Mr. Glazer. So first off, both bills are still alive. They are both in the second house, awaiting hearing, which has not been scheduled yet. That's going to be in the sometime next year. But the bills are similar in many ways. But SB 22 is essentially a reintroduction of Prop 13, the one that Mr. O'Donnell worked to carry AB 48, and then the last 2 weeks of session that really was heavily edited with some administration priorities, and that became the Prop 13 that was rejected by the voters. So SB 22 has some concerning provisions in it. It does have that increased bonding capacity provision that was used so effectively by the opponents of the bond campaign to persuade the voters that their taxes would increase if they were to approve this measure. It also has some set-asides now for stadium lighting. So for those of you who are school district members, you know that stadium lighting is probably one of the single most controversial things that a school district can do. So that's an odd choice. It most recently was amended to add, if you can believe this, bond money for a private medical school. So that would certainly be, I don't know if it's groundbreaking, I don't know if it's unprecedented, but it's certainly not the way we've been spending public bond dollars that I can recall. So those are some of the provisions in SB 22. AB 75, Mr. O'Donnell's bill, does not have programmatic change. He really is trying to keep it as non-controversial as possible. It's currently at $12 billion. And, we in the fall are going to continue working with the stakeholder group that Mr. O'Donnell's staff is pulling together and continue negotiating in good faith with all of the leadership, and the authors will continue their communications with the administration. One of the issues on which we are going to engage with Mr. O'Donnell's staff and the entire bond stakeholder group is the added costs of construction that have resulted from updates to the Green Building Code and those that we already know are coming down the line. So I think we have a receptive audience, and it's really, it's a great opportunity to educate some folks and to advocate for a more adequate grant amount. So that's something I'm very much looking forward to. And with that, I think that is the entirety of the update I was going to provide for cash.
All right, thank you, Nancy, Rebecca, and Ian. And I see, Rebecca, you responded to the question in the chat about the Williams criteria. So it'll be good to get a new, more accurate list of schools that we inspect to help our kids. So if you could take us to the next slide, please. And I don't know, Nancy, did you have anything else to add on School Energy Coalition?
Oops. I do. Thank you, Jeff. Just really briefly, we are charting out it began as let's do a fall advocacy plan, but really for School Energy Coalition and many others, we are charting a course for the next year, and even some goals on which we're starting the work now that are going to be multi-year goals. So for the School Energy Coalition, some of that work will intersect with the bond, right? Trying to make sure that the solar schools that we will now be required to build in the future, that we take that into consideration in the bond programs. And we're not sure really what that's going to look like, but it'll definitely be part of the grant adequacy conversation. And we will continue our advocacy on AB 841, on which Ian is taking the lead. And we will continue to advocate for general fund sources, because we know, and folks in the administration acknowledge that the resources that have been provided, while very helpful and appreciated, certainly don't get us all the way to our goals. So we're planning to kind of work backwards and say, look, this is where we need to go. What does the pace of implementation need to be? And what does the funding need to be year by year? And advocate for that kind of schedule. So without getting into the weeds, that's what the School Energy Coalition is going to be working on.
All right, thanks, Nancy, for that update. And it looks like Kurt, do we have Kurt Kutnick with us on the phone now? Kurt. I don't know if we have you.
You have me on the call now, yes.
All right, thank you, Kurt. Thanks very much for joining us. And if we could move the slide back in time to the DSA update. Kurt, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us and share with the membership on what's going on at DSA. I'll let you give your update.
Okay, so I'm on the phone. I'm having some internet problems here, so slides up. Ida sent them over.
Do we have Ida's slides, Courtney, to put up?
I didn't receive any slides from her, but I do have just this introductory slide.
Okay, why don't you
Yeah, I'll
just jump into it, Kurt?
So that we don't have a timing between my words and slides, I'll go through my presentation. So just some updates here. So for those of you who are in the Sacramento area, we have 2 additions to our office here. We have a new supervising structural engineer, Ryan Turner, who's going to be helping out our codes and standards unit. Then we were able to bring a gentleman by the name of Eric Driver over from Real Estate Services Division. Will now be our headquarters principal architect. So he'll be taking one of the roles previously held by Ida before she became state architect. Be overseeing our fire life safety, our access compliance program. Also in Sacramento, we've done some changes internally. Stephen Ito's moved from field structural engineer into field services supervisor. And Deloach is now supervising fire life safety officer. And Eric Edgman, who used to be our intake architect, is now and Deloach's old position as the project services architect manager. And that's what's going on in Sacramento in the personnel. The next item we definitely discuss when you can see my screen or Ida's is where we're at in our projects. I've shared with Ash in the past that we have a metrics unit that keeps close guard on DSA's plan review intake. And so for the current month, from October 1st to what's projected to the end of this month, 2 more days, we're taking in $564 million worth of work. That's a total of about 160 projects and split out amongst the 4 offices. Oakland's carrying the bulk of those 50 projects. Sacramento has 37, LA 44, and San Diego 41. Numbers don't always transpose over in dollar amounts because Sacramento's running at a quarter of $235 million lowest number of projects. So that trends because we can look at how we've been tracking a year ago today, and that trends with our numbers. Forecasting into November, it's increasing. It's going from 564 million. We'll be looking at our projected workload based on the intake side of almost $900 million worth of work. So we're going to see an uptick, and that is consistent. It's a little higher than a year ago. And that's just a comparison to a year ago. It could be different in the bond year, of course. So the breakdown there for projected projects is 58. Is 211 total projects. San Diego and LA just about tied at $300 million. And we do have the first 2 weeks of December as well that we can point to. And that's running at 58 projects and $380 million worth of work. So pretty good workload coming up for us. And again, to remind you, keep ahead of these things. We have 3 ways to do it: our existing staff, giving them overtime, and of course our consultant contracts to keep up with that measure of workload. I is extremely pleased with the staff that they have, even though we're been with our workload. Hired adults, they behave like adults, and it appears that the work is getting done, and that the quality of the work is not suffering, which Moving to our codes and standards and regulatory process, major things we do here at DSA is code development. We're a code promulgating agency. So we've going on there that you may find of interest. In the 2022 rulemaking process, there's going to be some changes. We discussed these last time we just a reminder, if you're interested, you have 1 day to participate in 2022 California Building Code Chapter 11B update. And that's for public comment, which is the 15-day comment period. It closes tomorrow, 28th, and we're clarifying what an access file is. We're clarifying and we're separating the scoping for entrances, quote, and moving exemptions from exterior ground floor units to 11B 2000 of egress. Also clarifying requirements for housing at a place of education. That, I believe, was a bill that came out last year regarding housing and where it's located on a campus. Moving on, we've got also in our rulemaking process, we've got Cal Green. We're doing a clarification of shade tree requirements and CO2 monitors in K through 12 classrooms, and the requirement for electrical vehicle charging station infrastructure installation to include charging installation equipment at the time of construction. Previously, it was generally the infrastructure, which was just the conduit. This is actually all hardware. This comment period, unfortunately, is closed for you tomorrow as well if you wanted to in this, but you know, the fact of the matter is, I can tell you, and Tom Duffy can attest to, he and I used to before I came here, participate, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and you're having to do what you're told without ever saying a word about it. The third item we've got going on, we've got 4 in the rulemaking process, is structural safety. We're doing some code work here. That construction shall commence within 4 years of approval, and extensions no longer apply. This is a big one for a lot of folks, because from what I've heard from our regional managers, we have done extensions after extensions after folks and been gracious in that. So the extensions will no longer apply, which be a request for extension. So be aware of that. And then in the building code, we're going to repeal early adoption of mass timber, and then we're adopting the 2021 IBC requirements. Impact you. The fourth leg of that stool for our codes and standards group is the fire code, and changes to Chapter 7 regarding fire and smoke protection features. So we're going to be looking at requiring the building owner to maintain an inventory of all required fire resistance rating and construction to resist blast or smoke. Maintain an inventory, kind of, if you would, think about your AB 300 list. And then we're going to do some Chapter 49 requirements to the wildland urban interface fire areas, which would require landscaping within areas designated as very high fire hazard severity zones to be fire-resistant vegetation, and that this must be maintained as it matures. I'll tell you about our fire problems here. We've got some energy code, approved regulations also. Let's see. In here, so we've got a prescriptive method and a performance method. Prescriptive being the code, performance being not the code. Energy budgets based on heat pump technology and water heating and HVAC. More performance method improvements to envelope. gloss right over this. Sorry, folks, and I wish I could show you a slide because we could go a little deeper, but I will not. Then have DSA Academy. Our LMS system, our learning management system, is now live. So for your project inspectors, you can go online and get your recertification. Then we're going to have an accessibility and sustainability free on demand. And so you'll have access to a webinar we recently did with PG&E and SoCal Edison, and that was the All Electric California Schools Kitchen webinar, and then our electric charging station accessibility update. Academy and look. Let's see what else we have here. So we have some changes going on here. Everybody knows you do plan review, and then we do a back check. We're going to change the way we do our back check. We're going to review the final plans that incorporate the design professionals' responses to DSA's plan review in phases. So the first phase would be our desktop review, and it's not interactive with the design. And we'll do a second phase, and it's an in-person interactive, which was very much like our phase one. Why? Well, we think we can do a better job of going through the plans on the back check side with just one staff person looking at the comments that come in. Save the design professionals and the client's time from coming in for naught, in case there are kickbacks on the back check. And it's not a second bite of the apple for us, it's a second bite of the apple for you through our review. So we believe this is a more efficient way of doing these, and the object of the transaction, which is the ability that children can learn in, is accomplished in a much more. So this will implement January of 2022. We've done our beta testing and work, and I'll be the better for it. I think that's about it for me. And so if you folks have any questions, I'd be happy to hear them and answer them.
Hi, Kurt. This is Jeff Becker. Just a couple of questions or things that you could possibly elaborate on for us. One is, participation in the codes and standards and regulatory update process. I think that your comment about if you're not at the table, you're on the menu is somewhat true. One of the things that I hear from the field a lot is related not so much to what the measure itself may be or what the code or regulatory issue is, but more the cost that those generate for us. And so can you point us to or give us some insight on how costs are considered as a part of the rulemaking process?
Well, I can tell you this. So there is a Building Standards Commission, and it has 6 code advisory committees. And the committees are generally made up of parties from specific areas of interest. So in this particular case, if there is not an advocate, and I know that Tom is your strongest advocate, but if there's not an advocate in the room for educational facilities, and in this case K through 12, if there's not an advocate in the room, decisions can be made, and they're not cruel decisions; they're uninformed decisions about the cost of impact to a school district. And so it's more that there's no voice that will affect you in the pocket at the end of the day. There are, there are cost concerns, of course, for all, but again, if there's no one to tell them that, as an example, CO2 monitors and sensors. If we're talking about plug-in, that's one cost, right? But if we're talking about hardwired, that's a completely different cost. And so if you're talking about new construction, not such a big deal, even if it's hardwired. But if you're talking about retrofit and existing and hardwired, now that's a significant cost consideration. So if no one is in the room to speak to that, maybe you know, at the end of the day, safety rules, but phasing these things in or taking a sensible approach to how you phase them in without undue hardship to a district. That requires that someone be there, and that you will end up with a cost and no voice in. Does that answer your question, Jeff?
Well, yeah, thanks for giving that a go, Kurt. And certainly, you know, Cash will engage with the issues. And as we look at a school bond coming up, you know, certainly anything that drives cost of a project, we should consider along with our partners at OPSC and in the Capitol that really drive the policy of what those funding mechanisms look like. So to the extent, you know, that I know DSA is looking at costs of schools as a part of the IR EB4 on existing buildings and retrofitting versus replacing. Certainly this cost issue is a really relevant issue for us in Cash. So we'll continue that conversation. The other quick question I had for you is, are you seeing and are you anticipating an increase in projects due to the TK program and expanding TK at schools? And maybe you could touch on that, on what that means for DSA and workload and prioritization of projects.
Yes, we are. Just one more thing I want to add, Jeff, to the rulemaking. Well, OPSC, CDE, and DSA are regulatory agencies, not advocates. I do encourage your folks to look at our websites for where our activity is in the rulemaking process. That's generally a good pointer for you folks about where unintended consequences may occur that for the districts. But to your second question, this is a major concern for us. You know, anytime there's additional funds available for district, it generally means that there's an opportunity available for the districts, and then the district is very good about turning that opportunity into a reality on their campuses. I mentioned a moment ago about the all-electric California Schools Kitchen of the Future webinar. My understanding is that SoCal Edison has grant money available to districts, and so that's an example of where we'll see an increase in addition to the TA program. We're looking at our current workload and when we anticipate those types of projects coming in. We don't have our own unintended consequences. I know that DSALA, Doug Humphrey, regional manager down there, has a lot of concerns about the TK program and what it means, because I can't. All our regional managers of where they're at, but LA, according to Doug, take advantage of that TK program and the funds available, and so our consultant contracts so make sure that he is adequately resourced to up with that demand.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that, Kurt. And, you know, I think one of the things I want to point out is, you know, DSA, you started the Public School Construction Collaborative as a bit of an advisory group at DSA. And both Julie Arthur, our immediate past chair, and myself participate on that. And I think up to that, there hasn't been necessarily a school district person on any advisory group at DSA. So we appreciate that opportunity and look forward to working with you on that and on some of these rulemaking issues going forward as well. So appreciate your time this morning, Kurt. Let me take a quick look at the chat and see if there are any additional questions. This is a good one, and I think that you can speak to it regarding extensions of applications and the time frame that we used to get an application good for a certain period of time and come in for 1-year extensions of that. Can you speak to that? I think that we aren't doing that anymore.
Correct. We are not doing the extensions. We're just 4 years is the max now.
Yeah, so I think that'll be a benefit to to the field of knowing that when you get your DSA approval, initially it's good for 4 years. So Arash, I hope that answers your question in the chat. And thanks again, Kurt, for joining us by phone this morning. Sorry we couldn't get your slides up, but do appreciate your time very much.
And it is apparent that it's on our side. We had new software.
No problem. All right, let's move forward a few slides. I think we're up to our annual, I think Ian spoke a bit about Californians for School Facilities, and now we're up to our annual conference update. So let me invite Alan Rising, our vice chair, up to give us an update.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Yeah. We had a great experience at our fall conference, and on the heels of that and working on the momentum of the fall conference, we are working on our 43rd annual conference, which will be back in Sacramento, February the 23rd, 4th, and 5th of 2022. It'll be at the newly renovated Safe Credit Union Convention Center. We're excited about getting into the new convention center and seeing all the great work that they have done to improve the facilities for conventions. We are currently working on finalizing the great list of workshops. Later today, this afternoon, we'll be meeting again with our planning committee to finalize some of the last minute details. We are also working to finalize details for the annual golf tournament, which will be held at Teal Bend. So if you're a golfer, polish up those clubs and get ready to chase that ball around the golf course and have a great time out there as you network on the golf course. Information for that will be forthcoming very soon. In addition to that, look for information on hotel arrangements on the CASH website. Those will be posted in the very near future to allow individuals to book their hotels. And registration is open for registrants to jump in and save your place in line for the conference in February. And lastly, for those of us or those individuals in the private industry, we are continuing to look for sponsors, support for the conference, ample opportunities available to get involved and help support the great conference that we're going to have in February. So you can reach out on our CASH website and find more information about sponsorship. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Jeff.
All right, thanks for your hard work on that, Alan, and thanks to the annual conference planning committee. 4 months away, it's going to be here before we know it.
Absolute. Time is ticking quickly.
Time is moving forward, that's for sure. All right, thanks, Alan.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, next we have our school district briefing on the COVID-19 reopening experience. And I've always enjoyed these to hear and get creative ideas of what some of our school district folks have been doing. And even maybe just a little bit of comfort in knowing that we're on the right track with that. And today we have Maria Campos from Chico Unified School District with us to share a bit about their reopening experience. So Maria, why don't you join me on your screen, on the screen here today, and I will let you share what are the happenings in Chico. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Sorry. So I think last time we shared with you guys that we are needing to be extremely flexible these days and fluid, and that hasn't changed 6 months later. Some of the items I'd like to share with you guys, challenges that we have found within our M&O department is staff shortages. Labor and workforce is hard to come by. We are having a difficult time covering all custodial shifts at sites. We are often short, leaving buildings such as our M&O and facilities buildings, transportation buildings, at time left to end users within the building to clean up after ourselves versus having our custodial staff do it because they are off at different sites covering other shifts. The limited supply of substitutes on our approved list is slim to none these days. Maintenance crews are also skeleton due to shortfall on workforce. Our transportation department, it's the combination of lack of drivers and social distancing requirements within the bus has made it really difficult to service our customers' students. The department went from a ridership of over 900 kids over COVID down to 250 during and now. All these students are special ed, SPED students. On the site level, and I reached out to a couple different principals to get their input since they're on the site dealing and trying to mitigate these issues on a daily basis. We have learned that parking and drop off is actually okay. And they've managed this by having all students be dropped off at one location. And this assists the staff in directing the students on campus and regulating what adults are allowed on campus. The one point of interest on our campus is critical to being able to manage this. Pickup, because 90% of the school is released at one time, or 80% of the school is released at one time. The staff have dedicated gates and 3 different pickup locations on site. And this requires a lot of management of siblings and assigned gates, etc. These grade levels and pickup locations, or these pickup locations are divided by grade levels, typically kinder 1 through 2 and 3 to 5 in our elementary schools. Parent and volunteers on campus is also a challenge. Understanding and communicating rules and requirements that are changing and fluid is not easy. The understanding of when parents can be on site and what requirements are necessary. And again, having one secure campus entrance to the campus is key for supervising and being able to make sure we're able to manage who and why parents and volunteers are on site. And again, on the site level, there is also a shortage of staff, and especially it's really noticed in our SPED, in our special ed classes, because student aides are needed and are required to meet the program needs. So the shortage of aides is really seen and is really hurting us at the moment. We are not able to obtain coverage for substitute teachers 100% as needed, as we've seen in the past. And we are having less applicants for teaching positions that become available compared to what we saw pre-COVID. Staff training, having an adequate place to train staff is somewhat of a challenge. Luckily for our district, a lot of our buildings and NPRs, bigger conference rooms, etc., are equipped with proper AV and the other tools needed for staff training. But a typical training that would have occurred in a classroom is not necessarily, doable because of social distancing. So finding locations in rooms, even if it's off-site, has been a challenge. And kids' socialization loss, we all talk about learning loss, but socialization loss has been an issue for our students. Our principals have noticed lots of behavior and social issues and loss of learning, as I touched on. In our facilities department, I think the disruption of supply chains has affected our construction projects, and the shortages of raw materials and other inputs has affected our contractors and subcontractors, as well as workforce. So in a nutshell, not as positive as I wish to report, but in a nutshell, we're working through all of these challenges, and I assume that other school districts are in our same boat. We have learned to be fluid, work as a team, and be ready to jump in as management and administrators to assist our sites as needed. We are much more flexible these days than we have been in the past.
Well, Maria, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. You have brought up a lot of issues that I know I've been dealing with here at the county office in Fresno, and conversations with our districts as well. you know what they say is if you stay flexible, you won't break.
Right?
And that's definitely true right now. So thanks for sharing that. And particularly, thanks for mentioning the special ed students. That's a population that's dear to my heart.
Mhm.
And, what we've seen during the pandemic is sometimes the folks that were on the fringe are the ones that are most impacted by what's going on. So thanks for looking out for them. And, your county offices, I'm sure, are helping in that area as well.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, I just wanted to chirp in there, Jeff, as well, and say, Maria, I think we're all suffering all the same pains together. So, but I did want to comment that this has really shown the focus that has been focused on our school facilities and the need to cover for all of those different tasks that are out there. Our custodial teams are continuing to struggle, and every day we are being flexible, and we are rearranging staff, and we are sending folks in different directions in order to cover the critical needs that have been identified at our school staff for cleanliness and disinfection and all of those things that are going on. And so just wanted to lend my moral support and say, yes, we're all struggling, I think, through that labor shortage that has been critical to our ability to meet the needs of our school sites and our customers. So it's a tough one that we're all dealing with right now.
It is. And it's important to stay strong and stay together and be supportive, be available for our, fellow departments, and flexible, resourceful. So, and
Creative.
ultimately we're doing it for the kids. So we need to prioritize and do what we need to do to make sure those kids don't skip a beat, right?
Yeah. And I'll also throw in there, advocate, right? Advocate for the needs of our schools and ensure that we identify that support that we need from our state policymakers and legislators to ensure that we build programs that are sustainable so that we can continue with this work as we move forward.
I agree. All good points.
Yeah, that's well said. Thanks, Alan. And special thank you, Maria, for sharing with us your experience. Again, always good to have you with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, if we can move on to the next slide, we'll just wrap up here. So job exchange and people's choice. If you have an upcoming RFP or RFQ or a job opening with your firm, please jump onto the CASH website into the portal, and you can reach a really broad statewide audience with your message. So you see on this slide some of the current and past postings on there. I've had great success in putting things onto the job exchange and people's choice. So take advantage of that. And if you could take us to the next slide, our last slide. So the next CASH day, the time and date is to be determined still, but Michael Watanabe shared with us the timing of the SAB meeting of December 7th. So, put a pencil mark on your calendar for December 7th as our next CASH day. And I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. It's great to have such a large group of attendees on these monthly meetings, and wish you all a great day. And as we move into November here, have a safe Halloween, everyone, and we will see you soon.
Absolutely.
All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.